You probably remember the 1997 South Korean financial crisis, right? Especially that famous gold collection drive. It was this powerful moment. I mean, citizens donating their wedding rings, their family heirlooms, all to save the nation. It's become a story of incredible sacrifice and national pride. But what if that story, the one we all hold up, isn't the whole picture? What if the crisis never actually ended? Okay, let's get into this.
So, the source we're looking at today, well, they argue that the popular narrative around the gold collection is basically a myth. And they ask a really simple but kind of shocking question. Did that incredible act of unity actually solve the economic problem? Or was it just, a very effective distraction while the real issues were left completely untouched?
And this leads us to the speaker's absolutely core premise. And honestly, it's a stunner. The argument is that the IMF crisis wasn't resolved. It's not some chapter in a history book. It's an unfinished event.
Here's the thinking. Because the fundamental problems in the economy, the root causes, were never truly fixed, the country simply got a bailout, papered over the cracks, and moved on. But here's the crucial point. If those underlying weaknesses in the economic structure were never repaired, well, they could still be there today. And that sets the stage for history to repeat itself, possibly on an even larger scale next time.
So if the crisis was never truly solved, then it makes you wonder, did we even get the cause right in the first place? The speaker suggests we need to completely reframe how we think about what happened and move away from the common explanation we all know.
Now, what's really interesting here is the distinction being made. The common view is that we had a dollar shock, an external problem. We simply ran out of foreign cash. But the speaker calls it a profligacy shock, an internal crisis, one caused by unsustainable national spending and economic habits. In other words, the problem wasn't a lack of money coming in from the outside. It was all about how things were being managed on the inside.
And that brings us right back to the most iconic symbol of the entire crisis, the gold collection campaign. Because according to this view, this is the biggest misunderstanding of all. So how much did all that gold actually raise? Well, when you do the math, it amounted to just a few hundred billion won. Now, I know that sounds like a lot of money, but in the context of the massive national debt at the time, the argument is that it was really just a drop in the bucket.
So if it wasn't about the money, what was the point? Well, the speaker says the campaign was an incredibly successful project for something else entirely. It was a masterstroke of creating national unity. It sent this powerful message of solidarity and resilience to the world. For morale and national spirit, it was invaluable. But, and this is the key point, it was never meant to be and never was an economic silver bullet.
To illustrate this, the speaker proposes a fascinating what if. What if, instead of gold, the nation had collected US dollars? I mean, this was right after the 1988 Olympics and a big boom in overseas travel. A lot of households probably had dollars just stashed away, unused.
And the potential impact? It's staggering. The speaker estimates that a dollar drive could have been up to 10 times more effective financially than the gold drive. Why? Well, because the problem was a lack of foreign currency. And that's exactly what people had sitting in their homes. Collecting dollars would have directly addressed that so-called dollar shock.
All of this builds to the central critique here. The real tragedy of 1997, according to the speaker, wasn't the bailout itself. It was that the crisis presented this golden opportunity for deep, structural change. And that opportunity was just completely missed.
This is really the heart of the argument. A true solution means asking why we got into this mess and then fundamentally redesigning the economic engine of the country. Simply paying back a loan doesn't fix a faulty engine, right? It just gets you a little further down the road before it breaks down again.
So what would that redesign have looked like? The speaker proposes a 4-3-3 system. 40% in foundational industries to maintain a stable economic bedrock. 30% in heavy industry to drive exports, and crucially, a new 30% focus on the financial and service sectors, the very area where the crisis revealed a critical weakness. The goal was to create a more balanced and diversified economy, one less vulnerable to a single point of failure.
And because that kind of deep change didn't happen, the speaker concludes with a pretty chilling warning about the consequences of simply patching things up.
The speaker uses a really powerful analogy here. It's like, you don't just give a beggar a meal. A true crisis is a moment when that beggar is forced to find a new way to live, a sustainable way to feed themselves. By taking the IMF bailout money so quickly, the country was just given a meal. Sure, it eased the hunger, but it prevented that crucial lesson in self-reliance and reinvention.
And this leads to a frightening pattern. The claim is that unresolved crises, they always return. The first time, it's a small warning, like in 1997. If you just patch it up, it comes back later, but it's bigger and harder to solve. If you ignore it again, the third time can be catastrophic. So the crucial point is this: the actions taken in 97 didn't solve the problem, they just buried it. And according to this perspective, a buried problem doesn't just die. It grows, quietly, waiting for the right conditions to re-emerge in a potentially much more dangerous form.
And that leaves us with the ultimate question posed by this analysis. We look back at 1997 as a moment of national triumph over adversity, but perhaps we should see it differently. Was it a painful lesson that forced real, lasting change? Or was it a critical warning that we, in our haste to recover, completely ignored?